All right, my next and final step to create a more realistic eye with my watercolors. I have given my watercolors some time to dry, so there's no chance of smearing or tearing. I am gonna come in with a pen or a fine tip Sharpie. You don't wanna do this step with one of these. It's gonna look weird, it's gonna look cartoony. And what I'm gonna go in and do in the colored part of the eye, the iris, I'm gonna actually scribble a little bit and create those strands or those muscles that allow the pupil to contract and widen. So they're gonna radiate out a little bit from that center because again, they control how this comes out. And I wanna make sure I'm varying my lines, and you can kind of play around with what kind of lines you use for this. And they can loop back and forth, they're not just straight lines. And experiment a little bit. They could be darker towards the center if you want. And there's one. Looks a little more realistic. Now, different eyes might have different patterns. That one's still a little wet, so I'm gonna skip that. There we go, this one's nice and dry. So maybe with this one, I have my loops and my scribbles mostly to the side, top and bottom, and then, and here maybe I switch to, I think we talked a little bit about scrumbling, some scrumbling in between that kind of reaches up into the color. And scrumbling is just kind of random scribble shapes. I'm not going crazy. I'm still being very deliberate about where I'm adding these things, but I'm also not thinking too hard about it because the human body is a very random sort of thing. There's one. And I think I'm going to show you just a little bit over here, some of the very fine line ones you can do that also give this sort of effect. And you can play around with how far out you space some of these lines. You can play around with how thick they are. And again, you want them to be kind of organic, which means natural, not man-made. You can play around with how much pressure you put on your pen, or if you really have nothing else, your pencil. Pen works better for this, it shows up better. And I know some of you are into really creepy stuff, so if you really wanted to, you could do some bloodshot eyes around it, like up in here. Yeah, and just kind of play around till you get something you really like. I'm gonna come in and even like add some of these coming from the outer edge, just to give me something that looks a little bit different.